Welcome to the My Opinion Podcast, the leadership podcast for women. This is a show that focuses on leadership, life, and love to empower women around the world to be the leader of their life. The My Opinion Podcast is a weekly show with Maya's Motivation Monday, focusing on leadership topics for women that feature guest interviews as well as solo episodes with Maya. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the My Opinion Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Now, in her opinion, here's your host, Maya Roffler.
Hi guys, welcome back to My Opinion, and we are continuing to talk about be the leader of your life, and today we're talking about purpose. So we've talked about values in part 1, and we've talked about mission in part 2, but today we're talking about purpose. And purpose is something we think about as individuals, I think our entire lives. We really think about what is our purpose, why are we here, and what are we supposed to be doing with our lives. And I do not think, in my opinion, it's any different with leadership. I think we really feel like we need a purpose when we're leading. So that's what we're going to be talking about today in this third part of Be the Leader of Your Life. But before we dive in, make sure you like, subscribe, and share, if you haven't already, the My Opinion Podcast, the leadership podcast for women. And I want to thank you guys who have continued to listen to the podcast for almost 2 years now. Well, the relaunch. And those of you who continue to listen to this relaunch, you guys are amazing. And leave a review. Let us know what you think. All right, let's dive in now. Let's talk about be the leader of your life, purpose. Normally, I like to give a definition of the word we're talking about or the topic we're talking about, but I feel like purpose is more personal. If you look at the definition, it's the intent to do something, I did it already. There you go. There's the definition. But we think about purpose so much as individuals. I really think we do. And purpose reaches a depth to any conversation, and leadership is just not exempt. In my opinion, we spend our entire lives trying to figure out what our purpose in this life actually is. And we actually, we question, do we have one? It's a loaded question, like I mentioned earlier, but I think that when we think about it with leadership, it brings a whole different element in. And I actually believe that we have multiple purposes in this life. And as far as leadership goes, purpose is really a direct reflection of your values in many, many ways. And it's so important. That's why you identify those values really, really early on. And that's why I did part 1 of Be the Leader of Your Life on values, because identifying your values is so important. And so I want to talk about that for just a couple minutes. I would say seconds, but I know it's going to be minutes. And I want to say, if you're still stuck on the first part, if you're still stuck on values and you're trying to figure out an answer for yourself about values, I understand. And there's a question or 2 or 3 you can ask yourself to really identify what your values are, or get to the core if you're questioning, are these really my values? Is this where I am? So you can ask yourself, or I'm asking you, what is more important than anything else to you? Okay, that's the basic question. And that still might be a little that's a little much, that's confusing. So the next question I would ask is, say, what would you not jeopardize for money, for comfort, for fill in the blank, for your family, for whatever isn't really, really like important that you really, really want. Those tend to be your values. So let's put it this way. For example, if somebody said, like, I will give you $1 billion. Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the $1 billion. Okay, that's not how life works, right? So there's going to be a circumstance. So if that person says to you, okay, Susie Q, she's my favorite girl. I always talk about her. I'm going to give you $1 billion, but you can no longer talk to your family. Would you do it? It depends. What are your values? I'm going to give you $1 billion, but you would have to keep this big secret. You have to cover up a criminal act I did. Maybe they did something really, really bad, right? You witnessed something. So that's your integrity. So the first one was family values. So it's really looking at what's important to you. We see these actually online all the time. We play along with these games on social media. They're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all these social media platforms all the time. So I would encourage you to play along with these games, sure, if you want to, at your own leisure. But people ask these questions because they're either having fun, but they also might be doing it because they're selling something, or they're coaching, or they're looking at psychological things. But for you want to start looking at it for yourself, because this is going to show you your values. Because if you're willing to drop off the face of the earth for $1 billion, $1 million, whatever it is, to no longer speak to your family, a family is not at the top of your value. Like, it's not a big deal for you. But if you are not willing to do that, to cover up a lie or cover up something that you don't think is right, then integrity, justice, all those things might be high up on the list for you. If you feel like here's another good one. If they're going to offer you $1 million to drop off the face of the earth for 5 years because you know a cure for cancer, whatever it is, then you know that justice is something for you because you're not willing to do that. You would rather give that cure to. Ask yourself some extreme questions is my point. I could go on and on. My point about knowing your values is that it leads you and shapes your purpose, especially in leadership. And novice leaders may tell you something like, oh, my purpose is to, and I'm like raising my hand here because I think we've all wanted to do some big things. And it's not that you won't do big things, but we all start out go the backwards way. So we'll think that our purpose is, oh, I want to change the world. Oh, I want to influence others. Oh, I want to make the world a better place. Oh, I want to, I don't know why I'm on the cure cancer thing, but cure cancer. Oh, I want to stop all violence, stop all wars, end gun violence. I mean, these are lofty, big goals. And by setting out with that big purpose, you're kind of setting yourself up to fail. But not only that, I don't think that you really understand what your values are, because who wouldn't want world peace? I mean, what are we on, Miss Congeniality at this point? I mean, these are lofty goals. Everybody would want that. Anybody with somewhat good values would want those things. But it takes somewhat of a flipping the script for us to look and say, okay, that's great, but let's look at some of those prominent leaders in history that actually made a great big impact, that did change the world, that did influence others, that we still talk about to this day. Did they set out with that purpose to change the world, to influence others? No, they didn't. I'm sure there are some that did, but they didn't. So I like to use like Mother Teresa as an example. I know Martin Luther, I like to use as an example. Junior King, of course. Um, Gandhi is a good one. They knew their values in their core first, and therefore their purpose came as a leader, and therefore they influenced and changed the world, and we're sitting here talking about them right now. They didn't just wake up one day and thought, my purpose is to change the world. And this really changed my life as a leader. And it just did. I'm almost speechless in thinking about that, because I knew I wanted to make change. I knew I wanted to do all these things. And that was over a decade ago. But I was focusing on the wrong things. I wasn't even that in touch with the right values. And when I say the right values, there's no right or wrong. I wasn't really aware of what my own true values were. You could even guess back then that like wealth was a value of mine, because I was just so focused on making money for the companies and that I was working for, and being successful in that way, because I thought it was being a service to the people that were working for me and the companies that I was with. But determination was always there. It was kind of misguided. But I bring these individuals up, these very high leaders up, because they knew their values, whether it be integrity, honesty that we always talk about. A lot of them had justice at the core, but justice is directed at something very specific. So we're going to talk about that on the next episode with vision, because that's when all four of these components really align with being the leader of your life. And that's when you really make an impact. So what I find a mistake that happens these days, and why this is flip-flopped, because we see these examples, is that so that happens. That's one thing. And you may see that too. Like we're like, oh, we want this and we want to do that, and we want to make a big impact. And that's fabulous. I think it's great when we all want to do good, whatever that means to us, because all of our values are different. I listed the top 25 on my blog. I talked about them on the first episode, so 2 episodes back from this if you didn't catch it. But there are hundreds out there. So you have to find out what's right for you. And I encourage you to really dig into the top 5 for you and start from there and branch out. But I know about 20 for myself. And that's growing and learning every day. But there's really 5 I hone into every day. And that's why I think 5 is really important that you just get really familiar with. And you know, because that builds your purpose. But I think a mistake we all make as leaders, to go to the next part of this, is we go along with the companies that we sign on with at such an early age, early time, and we get kind of indoctrinated into this with their values and their mission and their purpose, quote unquote, and their vision, which I'll dive into a lot more on the next episode about what your vision can be. And the trouble there is that it needs to be the other way around, in my opinion. I feel so strongly about this. And that's why I started this series, Be the Leader of Your Life. It's why I started the group, Be the Leader of Your Life. If you haven't joined it, join it. It's on my Instagram page. It's on my Facebook. It's everywhere. It's a Facebook group. I'm going to grow it. I'm going to be there a lot more talking. If you want to hear me talk even more, you could interact with me. But I'll be releasing even more information and ways that you can dive in and get tools to be the leader of your life. Yes, find ways to really dig in to get your values. Yes, find ways to build your mission and look at your purpose, and then we'll talk about vision. But we have it all wrong, guys. It's all about your values, your mission, your vision, and definitely your purpose as you move through life. And you need to ask yourself, with the company you're with right now, and even if you're building your own company, but if you're with a company, you need to ask yourself, do these 4 things align? And if things are off, I mean, you're not always going to align perfectly. It's like a relationship. It's like a romantic relationship or a friendship. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. But if they are so far off, like if you are a 180 from the other side, it's not a fit. It's not a fit. And we don't teach this. We don't talk about this. And it's time to talk about this. Being the leader of your life means that you know those things so that you can lead yourself in the right direction. And you're not leading yourself into a position where you have to then lead others when you're not even in a position where you believe in the vision, mission, values, everything that aligns with you. You're so far off. It's okay to not be perfectly aligned. That only happens if it's your company. And even then, companies evolve. So if you create a company and you're like, great, I've got my values, I've got my mission, I've got my purpose, I know what I'm doing, and now I've got my vision. I know where I'm going, which implementing that is what we're going to talk about on the next episode. That's fabulous, but life evolves, things change, you might get bought out, doesn't matter. So it's on to the next thing. But in that moment, you've got to be aligned. And that's when you make decisions too about that. And we'll talk about that on the future episode. But you have to be aligned with your company that you're working for, whether it's your own or somewhere else, because it trickles down from the top down. And if you're not aligned, your people will not be aligned. Or your people will be aligned to the company and not aligned to you. And then it becomes, as you can tell where this is going, it becomes a mess. So it starts with you as the leader. First of all, do you know your values? Do you know your mission? And if you know your values, you're going to know your purposes, because there's more than one in life. You don't just have one purpose. And as you're evolving and going through life, you're going to know. And this is not, 1950 anymore. We don't stay, not even 1980. We don't stay with a company for 20, 30, 40, 50. Sometimes we stay with a company for a long time, but not that long, 50 years. It doesn't happen anymore. We don't do pensions anymore. It doesn't happen because things evolve and change or get bought and sold. So it's okay to evolve. So being in tune with what your values and your purpose and all of that is so important, especially as a leader, because it's coming from the top down. So you have to know, you must know what your values are. Because if you're not aligned with the company you're with, even if it's your own, that sounds crazy, but I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and when they sell their company, sometimes it's not a fit anymore. So it's an evolution. I'm very passionate about this because I think purpose equals passion. I've had incredible women on the podcast talking about this. But in short, your values build your purpose. And I cannot tell you how many times I've worked for companies where they tell you what the values are and the mission and the vision and all of that, and it was pounded into you with emails and binders and reminders and memos and so many things, and you got swag and all of this, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter, because if it didn't align with you, then it didn't matter. So you have to know what your values are and if it aligns with you, because that's how you know if it aligns with your purpose. And I do believe in purposes. I do not believe that we just have one purpose to fulfill on this planet. And I think it's interesting because a lot of us feel like we're searching in our life, and this goes for leadership. We're like, what is our big purpose? What is our big thing we're supposed to accomplish in life? Well, a big revelation for me was really after losing my brother, which a lot of you know listening to the podcast. And, prior to that, it was like, I just wanted to be this corporate girl and this, build this corporate empire. And I had such a singular focus, but that really woke me up. And that was a moment where I really realized where I thought, it was was hard. It was so difficult. But through that loss, I woke up to, I'm a sister. I'm now a wife. I'm a dog mom. I've been a dog mom for a while. I'm a friend. I have all these purposes. I'm now a business owner. I own multiple businesses. I am a podcaster. I empower women. I didn't wake up, at 21 with a diploma in my hand, as, I was saying, knowing I was going to do that. But I realized I had multiple purposes. And some of those purposes might mean more to other people than others, but they're all a big deal to me. And that's really powerful. And I find that in different phases of our lives, we have different purposes. And leadership is not an exemption to that. You will evolve in leadership just the same. And I love the additions of purposes. And sometimes I have to lean into one purpose a little more than the other. And there's times when there's a spotlight on one more than the other. And it's made me a better leader. And I hope that helps you as a leader, because I think we all feel like we have to have this one big thing. And it's something I've learned over the past 4 to 5 years, that it's many things that make up our big thing. And we've all struggled. We've all been there. And in my opinion, leadership purpose is the manifestation of your values. And your values will guide you and guide you to your purpose always.
Thank you so much for listening to the My Opinion Podcast. You can catch up on past episodes on the My Opinion Podcast website at www.myopinionpodcast.com, as well as read the My Opinion blog and contact Maya directly with your questions. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at My Opinion Podcast and Maya Roffler. We'll see you back here next week.